Alrighty. So a few other people are still getting in here. Hopefully they get here shortly. So good afternoon. We're gonna get started. I want to start by speaking to the obvious. Obviously, I am not there in person. I am at home. Some of you already know there was a positive COVID case that occurred in my classroom. That resulted in, all the contact tracing and everything caused students to have to go home. There's some students who are in the mandated 14-day quarantine through May 11th. I'm also choosing to quarantine through May 11th. Even though I am fully vaccinated, I actually went and got tested yesterday and I am negative. All good stuff. However, just out of an abundance of caution. And, for myself and my family and for you guys, the students, I'm choosing to quarantine just to be on the safe side. So that's what happened yesterday. That's why there wasn't a live session yesterday. I went home after first period when all this happened and kind of had to mentally take care of myself, went to get tested and all that fun stuff. So not the best day, not what we wanted to experience, So I wanted to let you guys know that, let y'all know that happened. If you are currently in my classroom and there's a substitute in there, don't worry, the classroom is cleaned. They shut it down yesterday. No one was allowed in there after first period, and they did a full top to bottom scrubbing down as they're supposed to. I cleaned the classroom after students left yesterday as well, so there's that. So I know that this is frustrating and upsetting at the very least, especially for those of you who were directly affected by it. I'm not allowed to say who it was. I'm not allowed to say what class period it was in. I don't know who it was, so I couldn't tell you even if you wanted to know, because I don't know. They're not allowed to tell me that. There's laws that protect that student against their name being put out there, for good reasons. So it's kind of what it is. So that's kind of what's going on. Unfortunately, in the situation that we're in right now, with COVID still being a thing, and we're trying to get to that immunity stage with more people vaccinated and stuff like that. The possibility is still there, right? Even though we have the check-ins at the front of the school, temperature checks, telling students and teachers and staff that if they have any symptoms, if they don't feel well, to stay home. It's entirely possible to carry COVID and not have any symptoms. It's part of how the virus works. That's why it has spread so much. So even with doing all the things right, it's still possible for it to get out there. So we just have to be aware of that and do our best moving forward. Hopefully this is the only time this will happen for the rest of the school year, and then it'll just keep getting better from there. But that's what's going on. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything right now about this whole situation that they would like addressed?
I did not know about this at all.
You didn't know?
No, sir.
Yeah. Yep. That's why I'm at home.
That's why I'm home too. I don't know, I was not part of it, but I understand this, that I'm not a real school campus because of some family issues.
Yeah. Yeah, and you told me about that. You sent me.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions or concerns that you would like answered or addressed? All right. So again, hopefully it's the only time it happens. We'll be able to move forward from this. If anything does come up, you have any questions or concerns, please let me know, let a counselor know, let someone else know, talk to someone about it. You know, I want to make sure that you're doing all right. Also, please do know that if this has caused you to be a little more concerned about being on campus, and you may want, just for your own well-being, if you want to attend classes from home, even if you're part of a cohort, like you're supposed to be in hybrid learning 2 days a week, but you're not feeling comfortable coming to campus, it is okay for you to attend your classes virtually. As long as you attend, like through Teams, you will not be marked absent, or you're not supposed to be marked absent. So, if this has caused you to feel less comfortable about being on campus, know that that is still an option, that you can still choose to attend virtually only. And you still get credit for attending. And just make sure you turn stuff in and all that stuff for other classes so that they see that you're still doing stuff. So there's that. I want to make sure you guys are all aware of that. All right. All right, so I'm going to move on. Thank you all for listening. I wanted to make sure and not talk about it. It's kind of something important. So there you go. We're going to get started. Also, I only have my laptop. I don't have my normal multi-screen setup, so my process here is a little different. Hopefully it still works out very well and you guys get to see everything you're supposed to see on shared screens. I just don't have the same flexibility as I used to because I couldn't take that stuff with me. So what we're going to do first, we're going to look at some quick review for chapter 10, just kind of a wrap up of the main formulas and ideas that we saw in chapter 10, along with, there's two things that I want to specifically highlight that we didn't really get to highlight yet within our notes and examples. This is going to be kind of a quick rundown of notes. So I'm going to share my screen. See if this one's cooperating yet. It doesn't. Give me a second. Alrighty, so you should be looking at OneNote. This is the wrap-up notes that I have for you guys. You can also find these posted to yesterday in the calendar when we did not have classes, what I was planning to do, and spend a little more time on it yesterday and explaining things. But instead, I'm going to kind of run through this today along with a couple other things. But don't worry, there is no new content today. This is just a review thing. So we should have hopefully seen all this stuff already. All right, so chapter 10 is dealing with comparing two populations or groups. We do comparing two proportions and comparing two means. All right, section 10.1 was comparing two proportions. And we started with sampling distributions. For each of these scenarios, proportions and means, we can do sampling distributions, confidence intervals, and significance tests. Those are the three main things we can do here when comparing those things. All right, we started with sampling distributions. When we're doing a sampling distribution, we have to check conditions. Those are the large counts and 10% conditions for proportions. Remember, large counts is having at least 10 successes and 10 failures in each sample. And the 10% condition is making sure that your sample from each population is no more than 10% of the population. Once we have check conditions, we can calculate the mean of the difference of the two proportions, p hat 1 minus p hat 2. And that's going to be equal to the population proportion difference, p1 minus p2. Remember, when dealing with a sampling distribution, we typically know the population proportion, or at least we have a good estimate, and we get to use that number in these calculations. We then can do the standard deviation as well. We have the standard deviation of the difference of the sample proportions, p hat 1 p minus p hat 2, is the square root of p1 times 1 minus p1 over n1 plus p2 times 1 minus p2 over n2. Again, we are using the population proportions here, because we know them. Once we have the mean and standard deviation, we are able to standardize. We're able to standardize a given value, calculate probability of getting a value like that or larger, or like that or smaller, using table A, and z-scores and that kind of stuff, right? So that's how we use these calculations and standard sampling distributions. Right. Next, we move on to confidence intervals. With confidence intervals, again, we check conditions first. We must check the random, 10%, and sampling without replacement, and large counts. Remember, we have that sampling without replacement because when we're conducting experiments, we're not always sampling. Sometimes we're randomly assigning, treatments, but we're using individuals that were available. So there is no sampling, and we don't have to check the 10% condition. And then there's the large counts condition, which is the same as stated previously. Once conditions are checked, we use the two-sampled z-interval for p1 minus p2. And that is this big old chunk of equation here, where we take the difference of the sample proportions, p hat 1 minus p hat 2, plus or minus the critical value z star. Okay, and z star is found using table A, and along with the confidence percentage that we're looking for. Recall when we did confidence intervals previously, we need that critical value. Say we're doing a 95% confidence interval, then we have 5% essentially left over for the two tails of our distribution, 2.5% for one tail. We convert 2.5% to a decimal, 0.025. We go into table A on the inside of table A, find 0.025 somewhere in table A, and then that corresponds, or as close as we can get to 0.025, and then that corresponds to a z value. It will be a negative value. We use the positive value in our calculation for z star. That then is multiplied by the standard error, which is everything under that square root. Well, the square root and everything with it, right? That is our standard error. It is essentially the standard deviation using the sample proportions. Right, so we have p hat 1 times 1 minus p hat 1 over n1 plus p hat 2 times 1 minus p hat 2 over n2. Take the square root of that whole thing. That is our standard error. Then we have significance tests. Once again, we check conditions, the same three conditions, random, 10%, and large counts. Once conditions are met, we have our two-sample z-test for p1 minus p2. This applies when we're testing the null hypothesis that there is no difference between the proportions, p1 minus p2 equals 0, or we could also write that as p1 equals p2. Right? We can calculate the z statistic, right, where z equals this fraction here, p hat 1 minus p hat 2 minus 0, and that again, that 0 comes from our null hypothesis here. We take the square root of that whole thing right down here, and notice here we are not using p hat 1, p hat 2. We're using what's called the pooled sample proportion. This little proportion here is only used with significance tests for proportions, the difference of proportions, when we're assuming that there is no difference in the null hypothesis. So when we're using this null hypothesis, H naught is that P1 minus P2 equals 0, meaning that P1 and P2 are the same. We then use the pooled sample proportion as the p, the proportion within our sample standard error that goes in the denominator here. Right, so we use the square root of p hat c, which can also be referred to as the combined sample proportion, times 1 minus p hat c over n1 plus p hat c times 1 minus p hat c over n2. Right, so we use the same value in the numerator of both of these fractions here, but obviously we use the specific sample size for each. Take square root of that whole bad boy there, and we get the z statistic. We then use that z-score, right, essentially, in table A to find the p-value and compare that p-value to the alpha, and we complete our significance test that way. All right. Is there any questions about this? This is the thing that's slightly new that I wanted to point out, using that pooled sample proportion. So then that leads us to section 10.2 about comparing two means. Again, we have sampling distributions, confidence intervals, and significance tests. With sampling distributions, when comparing two means, we always check conditions first, the normal large sample, which in chapter 7, when dealing with sampling distributions, we call that checking the central limit theorem. Right, and this is, the normal large sample is that the parent populations are both normal. If that happens, then we can say that the sampling distribution of the differences is normal. If the samples are both large enough, meaning both samples are greater than 30, or at least 30, sorry, greater than or equal to 30, then we can use normal distributions and t-distributions. If those two things don't happen, then we have to plot our data, look at the dot plots or histograms, and make sure that both of those graphs are not strongly skewed and that there are no outliers or obvious outliers. If that happens, then again, we get to use t-distributions. We're good to go. We have normality. And then we also check the 10% condition, which is the same as previously stated, right? Our sample size cannot be more than 10% of the population for each samples. All right, once we've done that checking, we can calculate the mean of the difference of the sample means, which would just be the difference of the population means, mu1 minus mu2, and we can calculate the standard deviation of the difference of the sample means, which is the square root of the variance of population 1 divided by n1 plus the variance of population 2 divided by n2. All right. Once again, once we have the mean and standard deviation, we can standardize a given value and use table A and calculate proportions, right? What's the probability of getting a value greater than a certain thing or less than a certain thing, and do those types of probability calculations. Then we get confidence intervals. Again, check our conditions, random, 10%, normal large sample. When conditions are met, we use the two sample t interval for mu1 minus mu2, which is our lovely formula here. The difference between x bar 1 minus x bar 2 plus or minus the critical value t star. We find the critical value t star using table B. We use table B, and whichever degree of freedom is lower, n1 minus 1 or n2 minus 1. Right? And again, using table B with confidence percentages, there's a percent row on the very bottom of table B. We find the confidence percent that we're looking for, like 95%, and then follow that up from the bottom until we intersect with the degree of freedom that we're using. Okay, and that would be the t star value we use. Then multiply that by the standard error, which again is very similar to the other formula we just saw. It's the square root of the variance of sample 1 divided by n1 plus the variance of sample 2 divided by n2, which, if you have the standard deviation for the samples, is just the standard deviation squared. And lastly, we get our significance tests for the differences means, check your conditions, random 10% normal large sample. Once conditions are met, we use the two-sample t-test for mu1 minus mu2. We use the t-statistic, which is t equals x bar 1 minus x bar 2 minus mu1 minus mu2. Right? The mu1 minus mu2 is based on our null hypothesis. If it is mu1 minus mu2 equals 0, then we just put 0 in here for mu1 minus mu2. If there is some hypothesized value, like we're actually checking a specific difference, maybe we're saying difference of 1, difference of 2, difference of whatever that might be, then that value, the hypothesized value, will go in here, divided by the standard error, square root of s squared 1, s squared 2, and divided by n1, divided by n2. We will then use that t value along with table B, and whichever degree of freedom is lower between n1 minus 1 and n2 minus 1, and we'll get that little range for the p-value. If that range of p-value is less than our significance level alpha, or greater than significance level alpha, we then can make our conclusion based on that. Is there any questions? Anything I can clarify? I know this is kind of just like a data dump. It's a bunch of stuff, but all right. So then lastly, the other thing that I haven't gotten to spend a lot of time on yet, but I wanted to review, is the difference between matched pairs versus two-sample T procedures. When we have a matched pairs situation, which we saw at the end of chapter 9, we still use one-sample T procedures. The stuff we've seen in chapter 10 uses two-sample T procedures. Right? When we're comparing the means, this specifically has to do with comparing two means from populations or groups. Right? Matched pairs, which I'm going to highlight the two examples that are matched pairs, which is 2 and 4 here. Those have to do with comparing values coming from a single individual or a single pair of individuals, that we're concerned about each individual difference and not the difference in the means from the samples, if that makes sense. So in example number 2 here, to test the effect of background music on productivity, factory workers are observed. For 1 month, each subject works without music. For another month, the subject works with music. Well, subject works while listening to music. I don't know how I made that typo. On an MP3 player, the month in which each subject listens to music is determined by a coin toss. The fact that it's determined by a coin toss gives us that random condition. Right? This is a matched pairs situation in which we would use a one sample T procedure because we're getting two values for each one individual. There's not two separate groups. There's two different treatments being applied to one individual. So ultimately, the thing we're comparing is for each person, we get a difference in productivity. That difference is then recorded for each individual, and we have one sample of differences to then do T procedures on. It could be confidence interval, it could be significance test, depends on what we're asked. Right. In the other example, we're comparing the average weight gain of pigs fed two different rations. 9 pairs of pigs were used. So we have one group of 9 pairs of pigs. The pigs in each pair were litter mates. A coin toss was used to decide which pig in each pair got ration A and ration B, so we have a random assignment. And then again, what we're collecting is the difference in weight gain amongst each pair. So again, we're collecting the weights of each pig, and amongst the pairs, we're then recording the difference in weight gain. So we again have one set of sample data that is being used to conduct our T procedures. So it is a one sample T procedure. In the other cases, when we have a 2 sample T procedure, we are comparing 2 separate populations that we've collected a sample from, or we have 2 separate groups receiving 2 different treatments. that we're now making an average out of and comparing those results. Is there anything else I can clarify with this and how these two scenarios are different? Okay, so once again, this is already posted in the calendar for yesterday. So you can download these notes if you like. I will also add them into the Chapter 10 module as a resource. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen there. Okay, so then next, couple things. Oh, I should do this. All right. So next thing we're going to do is do a little bit of preparation for the AP exam. So first, you need to make sure you have a computer, not an iPad, not a phone, that you will take the AP exam on. You cannot take the AP exam on an iPad or tablet of any kind or a phone. It does not work, it will not work, it's not possible. So if you do not have a school-issued laptop, or you do not have access to a laptop as of right now, or if the laptop you're using just isn't terribly reliable, there is an option for you right now. We do have a set of computers that were purchased specifically for AP classes and AP testing. They were purchased last year, but they finally got here this year. And to access these computers, you need to be registered to take an AP exam. You need to be able to go to the library and return your school-issued laptop if you're using a school-issued laptop. Otherwise, if you're using your own laptop, it doesn't matter if you can return it. When you check out the new laptop, which these are NIMSI computers, is what NMSI, NIMSI, that's an organization that helps us with our AP testing and accommodations here that we have access to. And so again, if you're not returning a school-issued one, you're like trying to get one that's just more reliable than the one you have, you don't need to return anything. And you need to be able to pick this up. We're trying to have you guys be able to pick these up by the end of this week. That is mostly because they're giving AP Stats and AP Calc first crack at these computers because they were specifically ordered for mathematics AP testing. But if they're not going to use them, we're not going to use them, then they're going to offer them to other AP classes. And that's going to start next month. So if you need a more reliable laptop than the one you're currently using, or if you do not have access to a laptop right now, then you can take advantage of one of these NIMSI computers that you can just check out from the library. Or you need to make sure that you can get a school-issued device at some point so that you can take the AP exam, because you need something that is reliable. So there's that. Is there any questions about that? Yes, Valentine.
Let's just say that if you got everything done and you just forget the username, the password to sign in the AP exam, what will you do? That's the thing. I'm just
if you can't sign in, then you can't take the exam. You have to be able to sign into AP Classroom. That is the first step when you download the AP testing app. Is you have to log in using your AP Classroom username and password. If you need help getting those things, you should email Miss Booth, because she's our AP testing coordinator, and I believe she should be able to access that information for you, or at least be able to help you get it reset.
Okay.
Okay. Do you know her email?
It's Miss Booth?
Yeah. should be a booth at UHSD.com. So that's your email right there in the chat. It's a booth at euhsd.org. Right. And that is for our assistant principal, Ms. Booth. She's our AP testing coordinator for our school site. So if you're having username and password issues, that's who you need to contact.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Excuse me. Any other questions? Okay. So the next, we are going to look at a little presentation about the AP digital testing. That will hopefully give you guys a little more information on what is coming up next and what you need to be doing next if you're taking the AP exam for this class or any other class, because the same rules apply. All right, so here we go, our preview for the 2021 digital AP exams, which the AP Stats exam will be a digital exam. That is the June 10th testing date. So before exam day, you need to download the app. Right? In April, you will be able to download the digital testing app to your desktop or laptop computer, PC or Mac, either one will work. If you're on a school-managed Chromebook, which some of you are, someone should have already installed the app for you. It should have been pushed out to the computers. You shouldn't have had to do anything. If you need to check for that, right, you should be able to go to your little start menu, wherever that is, and there should be an app. It's called 2021 Digital AP Exams. All right. Check to see that it's on your computer if you have a school-issued device. If it is not, you need to let me know so that I can let the right people know to get that pushed out to your computer and get it installed. You could try to install it yourself. On my computer, even though it's a school-managed computer, so to say, it allowed me to download the app without anyone else doing it for me. So that might work. I don't know about Chromebooks, but it might work on a school-issued computer. All right. To download the digital testing app, you need to go to this website, which I'm going to put in the chat. It is cb.org/2021, /AP 2021 exam app. Right. So cb.org/AP 2021 exam app. That is the destination to go download the digital testing app. Right, and it will go to a screen that looks like the one right here. And it'll say download and follow the directions. Once it is downloaded, you will need your College Board username and password to use the app. Right, if you check Remember Me, you won't need to log in each time you return, which will be useful. Right, so this is something that you can do as soon as you download the app, sign in. Tell it to remember you, boom. That gets you up to where you need to be as of right now and gives you access to other stuff. When we get up to that week of the exam, 3 days before the test date, you need to complete the exam setup. All right. You'll run through exam setup in the app where you'll confirm some information about yourself and your device. You must complete exam setup for every digital AP exam you take. So if you're taking more than one AP test, you have to go through this same setup for each test at the earliest 3 days out from your test, but at the very latest 1 day before your test. You should do this at the very latest 24 hours before your exam. The day of the test, get there early. 30 minutes before your exam, you can check in. All right. You'll launch the app and check in. Launching the app sometimes takes a few minutes. Okay. I've downloaded the app, I've opened it, I've used it. Sometimes it takes like 5 to 10 minutes for it to get up and running. I don't know why. Sometimes it just doesn't want to launch. All right. So make sure you give yourself time to get the app open. Sometimes it just doesn't want to open. All right, so you launch the app and you'll check in for your exam 30 minutes before your exam. You got to review some privacy stuff. You got to type this little statement, which you actually do need to type. You cannot copy and paste it from one side to the other. It must actually be typed out. So that being said, you got to get there on time. Do not show up 5 minutes before the exam starts because you're going to lose time off your exam. Right before the exam begins, the app will lock your device. You'll need to close all other applications before testing begins. Right? It will not let you access anything else on your computer once the exam starts. It locks down. The exam starts automatically. If you finish checking before your exam start time, you'll see a timer counting down. When time expires, the exam will start automatically. Right. That being said, when it starts, it starts. Right. If you do not get there before the exam starts, and you haven't done your 30 minutes before setup stuff, you might have to retake the exam at another date, which may or may not be possible because we have like the last testing date. All right. You will get this directions that will pop up automatically when the test begins. Don't spend too much time reading it because the test has begun. Your timer is going. However much time you spend on this, you don't get it back. It doesn't hold your time until you say continue. It goes. So you might want to review these directions because you'll have very similar directions on the AP exam. You'll get these same basic directions on the practice exams. So having looked through these things previously using the practice exams will be beneficial, which we'll show you shortly. You also have a timer. Timer pops up at the top of your screen for each section. It will only it will show you like when there's 5 minutes left. You get no other time warnings, just the 1 5-minute warning. So you should keep track of your time periodically. You can hide the timer, except during the last 5 minutes of the section. Once time expires on the last section of the exam, your answers will be submitted automatically. You can annotate. You can highlight any part of a passage or question that you might want to return to or leave yourself a note to organize your thoughts. You do not need to write a note if you don't want to, but it is possible. Reference sheet. In most STEM courses, you'll have access to a reference sheet, which is the formulas and tables that I've been providing you guys with. It's going to be very similar to that. Looks a little different because it's digital, it's not printed, but basically the same thing. If your AP exam requires you to or allows calculators, you must bring your own. Bring that TI-84 calculator. It does all the things you want it to do. And also start practicing with it. Excuse me. Zoom and expand. You can zoom in and zoom out to get a closer look at any part of a question. You can find the zoom in out buttons under More. You can also make one side of the screen bigger than the other with the expand left or expand right controls. Those are right in the middle of the top of the screen. Okay, so you can kind of like zoom in, zoom out, do all that kind of fun stuff, get a better look at stuff. There are help options. On every screen, you have access to a help page where you can view frequently asked questions. Again, this might be something you want to review in the practice exam because when you're in the exam, that timer is going. Multiple choice questions. Most AP exams are a combination of multiple choice and free response questions. Some multiple choice questions are centered on the screen while others have stimulus content on the left and questions and answers on the right. There is no going back while taking multiple choice questions. On multiple choice questions, you won't be able to move back and forth between questions or return to questions you've already answered. But also remember, there is no penalty for guessing. All right, so once you submit your answer for a multiple choice question, it's going to give you this warning, hey, you can't go back. You say, okay, let's go forward. You will not see that question again. Breaks between sections. Between sections, you'll have a break. A timer will let you know when the next section starts. Just like at the beginning of the exam, when the time expires, the exam will resume automatically. Free response questions. On free response questions, you'll type directly into the app, and all your work will be saved automatically. Any special characters you need are available in the text editor. There are no files to upload, and you won't submit any handwritten work. Everything will be typed into the app. Right? You're not going to be asked to draw a histogram or a dot plot. You might need to do that in your scratch paper, right, to see the shape of something or to check for normality, but that cannot be submitted into the exam. Also in free response questions, you cannot go back. Once you move on from any free response question, you cannot go back to it. However, on free response questions that have more than one part, so like if there's question 1, A, B, C, and D, right? You can go back and forth between parts until you're done working on the entire question. Right? So if you've completed parts A, B, and C and you're working on D and you want to go back to something in A, you can. Once you've completed part D and submitted all of question 1, you cannot go back to any part of question 1. After your exam, answer submission. When testing time expires, the app will end the exam and your completed answers will be submitted automatically. Do not exit the app until you see a congratulations message confirming that we received your answers. So when you see this screen, don't do anything. Don't touch anything. Don't close your computer. Don't click anything. Wait. It says stand by. When you see this screen, you're all set. Check AP Students to see when your results will be posted. And it even tells you that there in the box. If your internet connection drops at the end of the test, we'll show you some immediate steps that you'll take to complete your answer submission. If you run into an issue you can't recover from, you can go to My AP to request a makeup. Right. So hopefully it's just an intermittent thing and then you can do these steps and get things going. However, in the unfortunate event that something goes horribly wrong, you may have to make up your test. All right, so this month, right, you'll be able to download the app and start practicing. You'll need your College Board username and password to use the exam app, so make sure you have that info handy. Good luck. All right, and so this is what the testing app kind of looks like on the interface. You have My Exams in Practice. We're going to take a look at this right now. All right. So this is kind of what the initial landing page for the digital exam app looks like. Obviously, I've already logged into my account here. That's why it's asking if this is me. When you first download the app and open it up, it's going to ask you to sign in. Make sure to click Remember Me, sign in, and then this is where you'll land when you open the app. Right, when I hit Continue, it's going to think. And then we land on this page where it has My Exams. Now notice your exams do not appear here until 5 days before the exam. So if you don't see your exams right now, don't worry. It's just because we're not 5 days out. Right, so essentially the week of your exam, it should be there. If it's not, something's gone wrong. You need to, email Ms. Booth, talk to me, we'll get it figured out. Any exams that you have taken will show up in past exams. We also have practice. There are 2 practice scenarios here. You have your general AP Stats digital practice. This is a longer practice. This goes through bigger chunks of what the AP exam will be like. I think there's like 15 multiple choice questions and 3 free response questions with multiple parts. Overall, that exam I think is like an hour and a half from start to finish. The app demo is shorter. I think it's only 5 multiple choice questions and 1 free response question, about like 40 minutes in total. Both of these practice options allow you to go through the exam setup, which is the thing you do 3 days out, the 30-minute before registration part, and taking a practice exam. So you get to see what that looks and feels like, how to type in the stuff, how to use the editor, and go through that experience, which we will do next week. We'll go through one of these practice exams. I'll decide which one, but we'll be doing that next week. I do suggest doing both of them, just so that you, again, get to experience like the timer and what it feels like, and you have that going into the exam, so it's not all brand new. All right, so there's that. That's kind of what the exam looks like. I'm not going to start the setup and stuff because once it gets going, if I go into the lockdown browser, then I can't get out of it. And that causes problems. I have to wait for like the timer to run out and stuff, and it just takes a while. So we're not going to do that. Oops. Click this. All right. So that's the AP digital exam app, right, which we will be using for those of you taking the AP exam. So again, please make sure to download the app and log in, right? Register that. Also, make sure that you're registering and logging in the app to the computer you will be using to take your AP exam, right? When you go through the exam setup, it will ask you if this is the computer you will be using to take the AP exam. If you say no, it's going to stop. It's not going to let you continue. You can only have this app registered to one computer at a time. You cannot have it on multiple devices. All right. Is there any questions? Okay, so with that, I will be checking my dashboard to see of those of you who are registered to the AP exam, who has downloaded the app and logged in and done that stuff, because I can monitor that on my side. So as we go forward the next couple of weeks, if you have not done those things, I will be asking you to do them again and again to make sure that that happens on time. Other than that, that is all that I wanted to do today. Next week we'll be doing some practice AP exam stuff, and possibly some more review over the previous chapters that we've covered. We'll probably start with chapter 11 the following week, but I think I'm going to be kind of combining the last few chapters into a single unit, just to be a little more effective with our time, so that we can have more review time and practice time and things like that as we get towards the end of the semester and end of the school year and AP exam approaches. All right, so if there's any other questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know. And other than that, have a great rest of your day, have a great rest of your week, have an awesome weekend, and I will see you next week.